Hello and welcome to That Fabric Guy. My name is Basland and every week on YouTube I will be teaching you about Microsoft Fabric, and today we're going to look at Delta tables in a very short format. We're going to look at Delta tables in 4 minutes, and this will be part of a larger series where I present everything you need to know about Delta tables. So let's dive in. Why do we need Delta tables to begin with? A Delta table is a set of files on a data lake, and most data lakes fail in a very dumb way. They are just putting files on a data lake, but then it will be very hard to do things with those files and with the data in those files. You cannot easily query files, you cannot easily compute numbers across files or filter or do things like that. Things you're doing as a data engineer or a data analyst on a daily basis. Delta is the fix, or it is a fix. There are more formats that do the same thing that Delta Lake does, but Delta is the format that is chosen by Microsoft Fabric as the default table format. It enables you to get database-like behavior on top of file storage on the data lake. So you get the best of both worlds. You get cheap and reliable and fast storage on the data lake, and you can query that data with tables and columns and data types and ACID transactions as if it were tables in a database. So it's really the best of both worlds. The official definition of Delta Lake is that it is an open source project that enables building a lakehouse architecture on top of data lakes. What is a Delta table then? Forgive me my handwriting, this is something I scribbled down myself. And let's say I'm better in Fabric than in drawing. So this is basically a sketch of what the inside of a Delta table is. So I've drawn this big box called the Delta table, and inside the Delta table are two types of objects. On the left side you find the first object type, that's the Delta log, that contains all the transactions that have been added to the Delta table, and on the right side you see the Parquet files, and there can be one or more than one Parquet file. The Parquet files that you see here drawn on the right, they actually store the physical data. Combined, they are not the entire state of the Delta table though. Combined, they are maybe more than just a Delta table, because every transaction, every insert, update or delete that is happening on the Delta table can potentially generate one or more Parquet files in the Delta table. And then the Delta log will actually create a transaction log that is pointing to the correct Parquet files in order for the Delta engine, if you're querying with Spark or with SQL, for example, in order for the Delta engine to understand what files needs to be queried in order to serve you with the correct data. So why would we use Delta? We will use Delta to create ACID transactions. We would like to have metadata handling, and we want to add things beyond just storage. I mean, in a file, in a CSV file or a JSON file, or even a flat Parquet file, we can store data. But Delta adds rules, history, save writes, concurrent writes get handled correctly. And then inside Fabric, where do we find Delta? We're looking at Microsoft Fabric right now. I've opened a lakehouse. The lakehouse is called Gold, and we're looking at the tables section at a table. The table is called silver.taxi zone lookup, and we see a table in here that contains taxi zone lookups from the New York City TLC open source dataset that I like to use in my demos. Now we're looking at a Delta table right now, and you wouldn't know, this could have been a SQL table as well, or it could have been a CSV file displayed as a table, but trust me, this is a Delta table. Why do I know that? I know that because we're in the tables section of the lakehouse, and in the tables section, if you start creating tables, they will be Delta tables on the lakehouse. Now let's find out how that actually works on the data lake. So in here we're looking at the Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer. You can see that right here. Tables is managed storage with Delta Lake. So if we open that, we can find folders for every Delta table that we have. So every folder in this tables folder is a Delta table. And if we now look at the Silver Taxi Zone lookup, that is then the table that we were just looking at inside Microsoft Fabric. And as you can see here, we have one piece of data. It's called the Parquet file. It's a small file, it's only 7 kilobytes, and then we have a Delta log table, or sorry, folder that contains a JSON definition file, and it contains commits. There's no commits in here right now, but it could contain commits as well. Okay, so underwater on the data lake, a Delta table is just a bunch of files. So if we are looking here, it is a folder containing a Parquet file and containing a Delta log. The benefits that we get in Fabric for using Delta Lake is mostly about reliability and performance. We get one table for storing data, but we get multiple consumption methods. So we can query the delta tables that are in our data lake or in our lakehouse using Power BI with Direct Lake semantic models. We can query it using SQL, either in Spark SQL or in T-SQL notebooks. We can use it through the SQL Analytics endpoint. We can use it with Spark notebooks, with Python. So there is a lot of consumption methods that we have on those delta tables. So we have one format that can serve a lot of different outputs. The governance and the changes that we do and the updates that we do to the data are managed by the Delta log, and that is really nice because it gives us time travel. For example, we can see a history of all the commits that have been added to the table. We can query the table as if it were a point in time in the past. So we can select star from table as of January the 1st, 2024, for example, if the history goes back that far, of course. Those are things that you cannot simply get with just storing files on the data lake or storing tables in a SQL Server, for example. So to do a quick recap, we have an open source project for building lakehouses on the data lake, and that is called Delta. Delta.io or Delta Lake is the name of that open source project. It is very powerful. It gives you ACID transactions, it gives you metadata, it gives you a transaction log, and it helps you to create one single format for tabular data storage that is queryable through a lot of different technologies, mainly Spark, SQL, and Power BI Direct Lake. Those are the three that I use the most. In the next video, I will be looking at the anatomy of a delta table. If you want to know everything about that, then please give me a like and a follow, because in a couple of days that new video will be online. See you next time.